Welcome to another in our series of Kehillat Israel podcasts. This is a recording of Rabbi Amy Bernstein's weekly Friday morning Torah study.
We are continuing in the book of Leviticus. We are in H. We talked last week about H. We talked about the Holiness Code. Professor Israel Knoll calls HS the Holiness School, because too often I think we tend to think of an author when in biblical texts it's not an author. It is a school of thought, and the school of thought produces a certain approach to both religion, to theology, to commandments, to the tradition, to the people, to obligation. We got it. So we are in HS. We are continuing in the Holiness School. So a complete approach to the P material, to the priestly concerns, to the way and the technicalities of Israel bringing offerings. And what we're going to get today is a discussion and elucidation of the liturgical calendar. Knoll has a whole bunch of stuff on this. It's very interesting. But we're going to look at it, and then we're actually going to go with Rabbi Erin Leib Smokler looking at the Sefat Emet. Mark read it before today and agrees that it's a beautiful piece. So she of course is using the Sefat Emet, Rabbi Yehuda Leib of Ger, to comment on the tradition. And she has the whole parsha to choose from. So for a couple of weeks now, it's lined up with our very small slice of the Torah portion that we look at, the third, right? Because we're in the third year of the triennial reading. So it's very exciting that it's lined up for us, that we get to look at her stuff. Okay, so let's go right to the text. Leviticus 23:23. By Deber Adonai al Moshe Emor, something new and different. God said to Moses, saying, "Speak to the Israelite people and say, in the 7th month, on the first day of the month, you shall observe complete rest, a sacred," okay, you know what? No, we're going back a little. Sorry, I lied. We're going to go back a little because it's a little weird to start where we started, even though it's the triennial reading. Let's go back to verse 4. All right, notice in verse 4 what we get here. Ele mo'adei yud-he vav-he, right? These are the sacred occasions of yud-he vav-he. So the word here is from the shoresh, mo'ed, or mem ayin daled is the shoresh. The Hebrew word is mo'ed. All right. So mo'ed is by definition. We've been talking throughout Leviticus about what is kadosh and what is not, like what is sacred, what is not, what is tahor, what is pure, what is tameh, what is impure, right? We go back and forth because that's the priestly concern, right? You can't have any kind of ickiness or it will repel the pure, only pure force that is God. So we have to be careful about what is kadosh, what is set aside for God, what is not. Mo'ed is a time that is set aside. So by definition, Mo'ed is kadosh, right? Is sacred. And what do we know about sacred? What does sacred mean in Hebrew actually? What does kadosh mean? Separate. Completely separate, completely set apart. There's no word holy in Hebrew. That's our English way of talking about it, sacred or holy. Kadosh is completely set apart, meaning for God. Okay? So Mo'ed is by definition kadosh. It is a sacred time. Okay. So what is the opposite of that? What is the opposite of kadosh? Stumped him. It is chol. Chol is secular, regular. So remember, we've been talking about normally we are in a state of kedusha, of being tahor, of being pure. Then life happens, and there are things that make us tameh. There are things that make us impure. That's fine. That's how it's supposed to be. Being impure is not bad. It's not wrong. It's not awful. It is just dysregular. It's non-regular. Chol, time that is not kadosh, is not bad. It's not less than. It is regular. Okay? So all of the priestly system is based on what is regular and what is not regular, and what you do in both of those cases. When it's a person, it's about how close you can come to the sancta. If you are impure, you can't approach the sancta. If you have a certain level of impurity, like tzara'at, right, then you're outside the camp. You can't even be in the camp because your level of non-tahorness, non-purity, can contaminate the camp, and then God's presence can't dwell in the camp, right? So that's for a person. But what about time? It's also relevant for time for ancient Israel. There is time that is moed, that is by definition kadosh. That time is set aside for God. So just like when you're pure or impure, there are things you can and cannot do as a person vis-a-vis the sancta and the community and sacred space, so there is with time. If it's moed, there are things you can and cannot do because that time is kadosh. And there are rules about engaging with kadosh, with kedusha, right? With holy stuff that has to do with God. Like Shabbat. Shabbat is moed. It is a festival, a sacred time, and whole time is regular time. You just do what you do. So if you like eating a bologna sandwich at lunchtime at exactly 12:02 on Thursdays, there's nothing wrong with chol. Chol is a great thing. It's not less than, it's just different from moed, from time that is set aside for God.
The Havdalah prayer talks about the separation of Kodesh L'Chol.
So we
Hamadil ben Kodesh L'Chol, separating.
Exactly. So we talked last class that I did, why do we do that? Check it out as a podcast if you missed the class. Why do we do that? Why do we do Havdalah? Right? And so that was one of the questions we asked was, why do we do Havdalah? Why do we have this whole set of blessings and rituals to end Shabbat if Shabbat is the funky, amazing, sacred time? It's because we have work to do the other 6 days. And that is also a sacred obligation, is to go out and use our practice of Shabbat and how it changes us, hopefully, to go out in the world and do work that repairs the world, that moves the world a little bit closer to what it should be from what it is. That's the whole point of the tradition, according to the rabbis. The whole point of this agreement between God and the people of Israel, the whole point is to move the world, this is according to Rabbi Yitz Greenberg, to move the world from where it is a little closer to where it should be, could be. And that's the point of the covenant. That's the point of all of this business, according to the rabbis.
If you go back to the creation story, Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh creates the world by separating things.
100%.
Separating day and night,
separating
the waters above from the waters below.
Separation is the way creation remains in place. This is why we have so many P regulations around last time we talked about not crossing things. Linen and wool, not harnessing a donkey to an ox, right? And not taking certain trees and grafting them. You don't mix certain things. Men wearing women's clothing, all those kinds of things is about crossing categories that made, P very concerned about creation coming undone.
There's a prayer I say every morning, Moda Ani Lefanecha, and I know what the prayer means, but at the end I add one little sentence that says, let me get it a little better today than I got it yesterday, which reiterates what you just said.
Absolutely.
Our aim is to get it a little better.
Just a little better.
Now, I've heard you talk about this a lot, but it just occurred to me as you were speaking that there, probably the scientists here know that there's the concept of entropy in physics, which is, simply put, it's more chaotic. Well, like if you take a teaspoon of sugar and you put it into your tea, and then it mixes into the tea. D, sort of the opposite of separating. But that's
put it to your mouth so they can hear you.
Sorry, that's entropy. So it's the world going from it just struck me as you were talking, if you look at this like a physics problem, it's the separation is exactly the reverse effect of entropy.
Right.
I mean, life itself, a lot of biologists would say that it's going backwards. It's entropy going backwards. It's organizing itself. A cell is dividing into, the certain parts, and the chemicals themselves are sort of separating, and it's sort of reorganizing itself. And it just occurred to me that the kind of the life force or the this obsession with separation is kind of an obsession with reversing entropy, really.
Beautifully said.
Yeah.
Beautifully said. Thank you for giving us that contemporary, context. Because yes, for them, it really was the undoing of creation. If you start to have things, if the sugar melts into the tea, it's not sugar anymore the same way.
Right. You want it to go back to its original.
You want sugar to stay sugar and tea to stay tea. Because if it all starts to do that dissolving, we have the original condition of tohu vavohu, of complete, right? And that's what God did to make creation, was separate those things.
But what they're kind of saying is you have to fight entropy. It's not enough just to hang out. Because
you have to be vigilant about entropy. Yes.
Right. The natural state of things are to devolve.
Yes.
So you sort of push it, and in the end, you lose. I mean, that's what the physicists would tell you, because eventually it all goes back,
Yes.
But you can. It's about fighting the progress of entropy.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes. That's how we would talk about it. The priests are very concerned about that. Okay, Mark.
There's another aspect to it as well. At least it seems to me, the whole issue of separating good from bad is very much a part of the earliest aspects of the whole developmental sequence, and is an essential part of being able to organize oneself psychologically in order not to be utterly chaotic, to have any kind of internal organization. But it starts out with this very absolutist need to separate all stimuli that are aversive from all stimuli that are gratifying. And one of the things that then happens is that ultimately leads through a very complicated series of developments to the ability to have a kind of a loving relationship with the external world, to be able to relate to the external world. It begins with being able to separate what the jargon is, to separate the good from the bad.
Okay, so all of these modern contemporary ways of understanding that distinctions are important. Whether we're talking about entropy, whether we're talking about I need to distinguish internally about what I'm drawn to, what I'm repelled from, or what I move away from, like a single-celled organism even does that, so that we can then have a more complicated, nuanced relationship with the outside world. So I just want to be careful that I 100% appreciate that perspective. I just want to make sure we're not using language good and bad in any way to relate to this stuff, because that's how we have got, too many people have misunderstood Leviticus to see impurity as bad, right? So, or dirty. And so I just want to make sure we separate that language from what we're talking about. But yeah, so this ability to really make distinctions, I think, allows us nuance. It allows a relationship of complication and nuance once we're clear about certain things that we distinguish between. Okay, so I'm not asking that we buy the whole P system or the whole holiness code. I'm asking that we appreciate what it's actually about and what it's trying to do and what it's not trying to do. Okay, so let's go back to now. We got 2 words into our text. All right, so Ela Moadei Adonai, Mikra'e Kodesh, Asher Tikra'u Otam B'Mo'adam. So here we get all this language around Moed, Kadosh, right? All that stuff. These are it says here set times, I would say sacred times of Yud He Vav He, the sacred occasions, Mikra'e Kodesh, which you shall celebrate each at its appointed time, right? B'mo Adam, in their time. B'chodesh harishon, in the first month, ba'arba'a asar l'chodesh, on the 14th day of the month, bein ha'arbayim. So this is an important concept. Bein ha'arbayim, at twilight. Between night and day. We have just talked a lot about distinctions. What is happening for a big action, a big ritual moment? Where is it placed? Between night and day, in a murky middle place. Interesting, right? Of all places, you're going to put it. Wait a minute, weren't we just talking about Kodesh and Chol? Weren't we talking about pure and impure? Weren't we talking about and Dafka? You're going to place slaughtering the Pesach, the Paschal lamb. You're going to put that at when? Between. You're going to put it in the middle between day and night. Very interesting. Between day and night, right? So that is not an either or, which is what we've been obsessed with, is either or. Okay. So we just get Bein ha'arbayim, between the times, right? Okay. Pesach la'Adonai. It is a Pesach offering to Yud He Vav He on the 14th day of the month. That's Pesach. Uv'chamisha asar yom lachodesh hazeh, and on the 15th day of this month, Chag hamatzot la'Adonai. We have the festival of matzot, of matzah to Yud He Vav He. Shif'at yamim, for 7 days, matzot tochelu, will you eat matzah. All right, what have we done as modern Israel? What have we done? We have conflated, as did the rabbis, we have conflated the festival of Pesach with the Chag HaMatzot, with the Matzah festival. We have put them together, right? We've talked about this a lot. Those of you who've studied with me a long time, the semi-nomadic pastoralist lambing festival gets put together with the new grain festival of settled agriculturalists, okay? So they take the two different subsistence technologies and the cultures surrounding them, and they no longer compete. They come together in what is now Pesach, on which, for those, so we have Pesach, we have Seder, and then we have 7 days of eating matzah. Ow! Okay. Bayom harishon mikra kodesh yelechem kol melechet avodah lo ta'asu. On the first day, mikra kodesh, it is kodesh for y'all. What does that mean? Kol melechet avodah lo ta'asu. So you shall do no work. It is kodesh for y'all because why? Because it is set aside for God. This is God time. The first day of that festival is God time. What do you humans do when it's God time? Get out of the way. Get out of the way and stop all your racket. Right? From very ancient times, don't disturb the gods. Because if you disturb the gods, terrible things happen. So this is time for Yud He Vav He, a sacred occasion, right? Y'all stop working, stop manipulating, stop monkeying around, stop all your racket, because this time is for God. Okay? So that's the first day of this business. And if this is God timed, what has to happen? You will make fire offerings to Yud He Vav He, of course. The 7th day shall also be a sacred occasion, right? So the 7th day, Mikra Kodesh, is Kodesh. Kol melechet avodah lo ta'asu. All of your work you will not do. So there's a Mikra Kodesh the first day, Mikra Kodesh the last day. To Mark's point, what's in between? You got all these days in between. So it's Chol, the time in between the Yom Tov, the sacred day, and the last sacred day, those intervening days are chol, but it's still a sacred chunk of time to God. So the rabbis call it chol hamoed, right? So it is chol hamoed. It is chol, yes, but it is in moed time. So you're not exactly in secular time because you still have prohibitions. You can't eat leavened bread. And you're still bringing fire offerings when the temple stood to God. So it's still moed, but it is chol. It is not don't work time, right? So it is a kind of mix. So this mix of not Yom Tov, not Mikra Kodesh, but it's still Moed. So it's kind of this in between. Chol HaMoed. So you'll hear a lot of people say, what is the Torah reading for Chol HaMoed Pesach? Right? That's what's the Torah reading for Chol HaMoed Pesach? What is the Torah reading for Chol HaMoed during Pesach? The non-holiday times during Pesach. We also have Chol HaMoed Sukkot. Right? Sukkot is another week-long festival. The days that are not Mikra Kodesh, where you don't stop working, are Chol HaMoed Sukkot. Okay? What also did we notice about when Passover happens? Which month? The first month. Chodesh HaRishon, the first month, is Pesach. All right? So say to the people when they enter the land, this is talking now about harvesting and not, because we're talking about harvest festivals. Because this can look like kind of random. When you enter the land and you harvest, don't reap all the way to the edges, right? You could imagine, why is agricultural rules all of a sudden here? Because these are harvest festivals. So don't forget people harvesting at Pesach, right? The grain, the wheat harvest. Don't y'all forget, do not reap all the way to the ends. And the first sheaf of your harvest goes to God. Right, goes to the priest. And when you have that sheaf, what are you going to do? You are going to elevate it. Behenif. You're going to lift up that Emor, that Omer, that sheaf of wheat before Yud He Vav He for acceptance on your behalf. The priest shall elevate it on the day after the Sabbath. Some people want to imagine that if you raise the thing of wheat and you lift it up and it looks like the wheat in the field. If you lift up the sheaf of wheat and it's waved, like it looks like the grain in the field. So you could imagine it's a derivative of pagan ritual that would have been gratitude for the harvest. You kind of want to emulate, right? This is what we're thankful for. This sheaf that used to be out there doing this, that's what we're acknowledging that we're grateful for, and we want that to be perpetuated, and so we make offerings and do all those things to make sure there's a good harvest next time.
I understand, however, that we're not really supposed to eat lamb on Pesach. Is that correct?
No, but yes, it is. The rabbis don't want, God forbid, for us to be confused that this is actually a Pesach offering, because there is no offerings, because there's no temple. So God forbid, it should start to feel like you think you're offering a lamb for the Pesach offering and then eating it. Back to our text. On the day that you elevate the sheaf, you shall offer as a burnt offering to God a lamb of the first year without blemish. Then we have a meal offering, mincha. Ever heard of mincha? The afternoon service? It's an offering. Mincha is an offering, right? So that's what the mincha service is. And we get the instructions: choice flour with oil mixed in. This is an offering for God, right? So what does God get out of it? Reach nichoach, the smell, right? And the libation with it shall be of wine, a quarter of a hin of wine. Until that very day, until you've brought the offering of your God, you shall eat no bread or parched grain or fresh ears. It is a law for all time throughout the ages in your settlements. This is why we don't eat leavened stuff. And from the day on which you bring the sheaf of elevation offering, the day after the Sabbath, You shall count off 7 weeks. They must be complete. Look at the Hebrew on verse 15. Shabbatot timimot. Shabbatot, weeks, timimot, complete. All right, this is where she's going to go. Sefat Emet is going to have commentary on Shabbatot timimot, pure, full weeks. But Amy, you better hurry because you only have 20 minutes left. Okay, so we started 5 minutes late though. All right, so you shall count off 7 weeks. This is where we are. This is where we are after Passover, but the rabbis are not clear about what are these instructions. Do you start counting the day after the sheaf is raised, meaning second day of Pesach, or do you count the day after the Sabbath? It is confusing, so the rabbis have to rule. The rabbis rule it's from second day of Pesach. So starting second Seder, right, we count the Omer. And so we're going to count 1 set of 7 weeks, 49 days. The 50th day, what is the 50th day? You must count until the day after the 7th week, 50 days. Then you shall bring an offering of new grain to God, because that is the barley harvest. 50 days after the wheat harvest in Israel is the barley harvest. That means beer. Okay, lovely. That's where people go in this class. You shall bring from your settlements 2 loaves of bread as an elevation offering. Each shall be made of 2/10 of a measure of choice flour, baked after leavening, as first fruits to Yud Hey Vav Hey, right? So this is leavened bread to be very distinct from, right, Chag HaMatzot, the festival of non-leavened stuff. With the bread you shall present as burnt offerings to God, and here we get what they are: 7 lambs, a bull, 2 rams, meal offering, libations, a he-goat, 2 yearling lambs as a shalom offering, as a shlamim. The priest shall elevate them, right? They are for the priests. On that same day, meaning the 50th day after you start counting, 7 sets of 7 days, it shall be a sacred occasion for you. We again have Mikra Kodesh. You shall not work at your occupations. This is a law for all time in your settlements throughout the ages. We started at verse 24 originally. Talk to Israel and say, B'chodesh hashvi'i, in the 7th month. Be'echad lachodesh, on the 1st day of the month, yiyeh lachem Shabbat zikaron, you will have a Shabbat of remembrance. Tru'ah mikra kodesh. What is the zikaron involving? Tru'ah. Mikra kodesh. It's a time of kodesh. That's it. That's it, people, for Rosh Hashanah. That's it. And what's it called here? It's called the 7th month. It clearly is not Rosh Hashanah. It is not the new year. It is the 7th month. All you're doing is saying, this is the first day of the 7th month. Why? Why do that? Why do Zikaron Tru'ah? Why do a Tru'ah on the first day of this month? Between what and what? But why don't we have then on the other Kodesh times? For what? It doesn't say anything. It just says, do that. Why?
Because it says so.
Because it says so. Okay. Very nice. Very nice. Nobody ever in this room says because it says so. Until they don't have what to say. Okay. Because God said so. All right, that's different. Because God said so. All right. So the one theory is, you go to let people know it's the first day of the 7th month. Why? Because if you look up at the sky on the first day of a month, what does the moon look like? The new moon is what? A
dark,
tiny
black
sliver, if you see anything. Right? It's just a tiny sliver. If you know, look up, this is the new moon, and you track the moon, what happens 10 days after
Yom Kippur?
Yom Kippur. So the theory is, You blow this truah to let people know on the first day of the 7th month that it's the 7th month, right? It's been a long time since Pesach, right? The first month. It's been a long time since Rosh Hashanah. So you could forget what month we're in if you don't have a calendar, right? And so, people pay attention. This is the first day of that month. Which month? The 7th month. Why is that important? Because the holiest day of the year is in this month.
Why do we have 2 New Years, basically?
Because we walked into civilizations. We were exposed to the Babylonian calendar, and we adopted the Babylonian calendar. There is ancient evidence within ancient Israel for both calendars, for both systems. And so the Babylonian calendar won because we were in Babylonia.
Right, but according to but it's the first month is still the first month. Do you know what I'm saying?
No,
and the
there's
7th
2 calendars that compete.
All right.
The Babylonian calendar won.
Okay.
What we have recorded here is one tradition. There was another tradition that the New Year began in the fall.
So the month of Rosh Hashanah is also, it's the 7th month and the first month.
Yes, historically, yes. Both. We have attestations of both.
But don't we think of it now as the 7th month?
No,
we think of it as the first month.
The first month.
Okay.
It's okay. One system won.
One system won. Okay.
Right.
At least they're both lunar.
They're both lunar, right? We got that. We got that. They're both lunar. There you go. So, way to go. Way to pull that together. Way to synthesize. So, right, somebody has to win. If you have 2 different New Years, one system has to win. Because we were exiled to Babylonia, because that's where the majority of the Jewish community was and stayed, the Babylonian system won. And what did they do in the New Year on the Babylonian system that began in the fall? What did they do in Babylonia? How did they celebrate that festival? Do we remember? Oh, what did they do? They crowned the king. It was a recoronation of the king. What is all of our metaphor in the Rosh Hashanah liturgy? Crowning God as king. That is Reconstructionism, people. Could be.
So there's a complete consensus on when the first month is?
There is a complete consensus that that's what we do now.
Okay.
Not that it ever, if you look at Torah, there's no way the rabbis can say it was always so.
Right. Okay.
We just read it. So, they know that.
But do they sort of coexist still? I guess I've heard both, or
no.
one.
The Jewish New Year begins in the fall.
Okay.
Right? So was there once a tradition where it began in the spring? Yes. There is no reference to spring being the first of the year anymore.
Okay, so nobody's going to argue with you on
Nobody's going to argue. You have to remember, the rabbi's opinion hold. It is legal. It is legal. Anything outside of it is not legal.
Okay.
So once they rule, that's it. It's done. Yes. Rosh Hashanah starts the Jewish New Year. So 57, whatever it is, starts at Tishrei, the first of Tishrei.
I've heard there's actually 4 Jewish New Years.
Oh, my God. Bert Kleinman has to complicate everything.
Sorry.
Okay. Yes, there are traditionally 4 Jewish New Years. The New Year of the trees, like we have a whole thing, right? So Tu B'Shvat. Okay. So if you want to look it up, Google it, 4 Jewish New Years. Look it up. It's from the Talmud. Or call Bert Kleinman, who will happily complicate your life. Okay. So I want to look a little bit at the Sefat Emet, because it's just a beautiful teaching, which really, really, I think it's a deep teaching for me at this time. So we're starting in the English of the translation of the Sefat Emet, Rabbi Yehuda Leib of Ger, the Gera Rebbe. Okay. All right. The days of the counting of the Omer, which is what we just read, are mentioned within the context of the religious festivals in Leviticus 23. Why? So the Sefat Emet is asking why. Why do we get the counting of the Omer right now? Because how could it have gone? Leviticus could have said, here are the times that are Moed. Here are the times that are Kadosh. Then, after that, it could have said, between 2 of those, You count 7 weeks of 7 days. There's nothing special going on. You're just counting, marking the days until you get to day 50. But it's not written like that. It's stuck in the middle of Moed, stuck in the middle of the conversation about sacred time. Why? That's what the Sefat Emet is asking. Because they are holidays, he says. Counting the Omer, those days of the Omer, those 49 days, are like Chol HaMoed. They are like the working days between 2 days of Yom Tov. How? Because they are in between. They have a holiness in them because before is Passover and after is Shavuot, which for us now is the receiving of the Torah. It's no longer the barley harvest, right? For the rabbis reconstruct the meaning of Shavuot to be, this is the day we got the Torah, right? So those are 2 big holy times. These are the holiest times for the people of Israel in ancient times. The liberation from slavery, right? Redemption from slavery. Remember, there's no redemption from sin in Judaism. Redemption is from slavery, always. Nothing to do with sin. So redemption and revelation, the 2 big blockbuster holy moments of Israelite time. In between are these 49 days. They have their own holiness the way Chol HaMoed does. Beautiful, beautiful teaching. The verse states, and then we got the verse, right? We read it. On the day in which you bring the sheaf, blah, blah, blah. They must be complete Shabbatot. Remember, we decided it has to be, we saw it in the text, whole weeks, Tamimot. The Midrash, that is an open engraved invitation. Why does the Torah have to add Tamimot? Complete. What, they're incomplete weeks? And there's never a word wasted in the Torah, God forbid, right? Ever. So why does it have to say Shabbatot Tamimot? Whole weeks. In what? There's 7 days or 7 days. A Shavuot is Shavuot. Like a week is a week. What are we worried about? That they have to be complete. So the rabbis are going to answer. Of course, they don't ask a question if they don't have an answer. They're Jews. All right, so it is brought about on the verse. The Midrash comments, when are they complete? Meaning they're not complete in and of themselves. How are they complete? When Israel does the will of the Creator. When Israel behaves, those weeks are considered complete. And it's brought on the verse, God is concerned for the days or the needs. The word can be interpreted both ways, is what Sefat Emet is suggesting, of the blameless. How do we say blameless? Plural in Hebrew, tamimim. So remember, it's all a word game for the rabbis. If it says that the Shavuot, the weeks have to be tamimot, and over there in the Psalms it says that God is very concerned with the tamimim, the blameless, there must be a connection. There has to be a reason. If it says this here, the same word there has to be a connection. That's the game, the holy game. So what's the connection? Just as they are blameless, so too are their years. So people who are tamimim, blameless, pure, so too is their time. So those weeks become tamimot. So when Israel behaves as tamimim, then their Shavuot, their weeks, are tamimot. Beautiful interpretation. What does it mean when the Bible says they have to be full weeks? It means don't read full, God forbid. Look at the Psalms. It tells us tamimim actually means blameless, pure. When Israel behaves as tamimim, their time is tamimah. Okay, beautiful teaching. Okay, but wait, we're not done. This applies to these Omer days too, which must be tamimot, complete, and are also days of the blameless, Yemei Tamimim. As it says, the Lord is concerned, right, for Tamimim. Thus they are within the category of religious festivals and are called 7 Shabbatot, blah, 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 blah. After the exodus from Egypt, when we were made to be like little ones just born, this is from the Talmud, and rested from the hands of the other side, the Sitra Achra, the dark side, right? When we come out of Egypt, the Talmud says, we are like babies being dropped into the midwife's hands, rescued from the Sitra Achra, the dark side. Remember, childbirth was a time of great danger for both mother and baby. So when that baby comes out alive, it has been rescued from the dark side. That is why the Holy One gave us these days, as it is said, you shall count for yourselves. It doesn't say you shall count for me, or just you shall count. It says you shall count lachem, for yourselves. What does that mean? This is a gift for our own good, meaning it's for us, literally for us, that we may come to be tameh, to be pure. Tamimim, tamimot, tameh, all about, sorry, not tameh. So that it is about becoming tam. It is about becoming, you'll see on a headstone, ish tam. Go to a Jewish cemetery and you'll see ish tam, that this person was an ish tam. Tamimim, tamimot, tam is singular. So it's taken on even more than complete or full or blameless. It's someone who's straightforward, who's simple, who's honest, who's good, who's pure. This is the sense of tam. The whole year depends on these days. Like the nurturing of crops during this week. The vitality of the person is revealed during this time, for the whole practice of the Omer is an indication of inner behavior. Meaning, this is a gift to us, this counting of time from one highlight in our mythic history to the other. This time in between is important too. It is a time for us to try to live into what liberation made possible, redemption made possible, the fulfillment of Torah. Only free people can choose to live lives of holiness and justice, which means accepting Torah, accepting the yoke of how to behave, right? So they're connected by these 49 days that are very important. Okay, what did I love about this teaching? Let's go down. Drop down. Page 3, bottom of the page. The days of the Omer are holidays of a sort. They are like the interim days, Chol HaMoed of Sukkot and Pesach. Those days in between big holidays that retain the holiness of the days, but not all of the restrictions or rituals. Those days are quintessentially liminal, not quite chol, mundane, and not quite moed, religious festivals. They introduce a third kind of time, one that hovers between the ordinary and the extraordinary. In this way of reading it, the 7 weeks of the Omer are 7 weeks of in-betweenness, 7 weeks of living between peak experiences, which I just laid out for you based on her teaching and the Sefat Emet's teaching. It seems fitting to me that the only ritual that marks this time is an awareness of time. Usfartem lachem, y'all shall count for y'all. All of these days, says the Sefat Emet in the teaching above, have an aspect of Shabbat to them, right? They're regular days with a hint of something irregular, okay? So I'm reminded, she says, of another period of in-betweenness that is also designated as a time for intense spiritual growth, the 10 days of repentance between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, right? Bottom of page 4. There too we have a rhythm of peak experiences held together by a period of extraordinary time, 10 days of introspection and return. All right. I'm reminded of another kind of little liminal time, says Rabbi Smokler, one that occurs every day that we just read in our Parsha. What is that? Bein hashmashot, or bein ha'arbaim, between the lights. Bein hashmashot literally means between the lights. Between the light of the sun and the light of the moon. That is bein hashmashot, the time between the lights. That, as Mark said earlier, between sunset and moonrise, because it's the time between the lights that we read about. Bein ha'arbaim, that's when the Pesach lamb is slaughtered. Okay, ow. So Pirkei Avot, the chapters of the ancestors, identifies this time as an especially auspicious one, particularly during the time of creation. Because according to Midrash, what happened the last day of creation at Ben HaArbaim, at Ben HaShmashot, what happened then? Well, if you know Talmud well, top of page 5, what happened at that middle in-between time of the last day of creation, just before Shabbat? What was created? The mouth of the earth, meaning the one that swallows Korach and his people, the mouth of the well, the mouth of the donkey, remember the donkey that talks? That was created then. The rainbow that God's going to give as a sign that God's never going to destroy the world again. Remember that? The manna was created. The staff of Moses, it's going to, help be the big thing. It's going to be the show thing for the miracles, the shamir, the letters, the writing, and the tablets. There are very different lists of this, by the way. There are very, very different lists. This is one list that we're getting here. Some say also the demons, the grave of Moses, and the ram of Abraham, right? The ram that's gonna be sacrificed in place of Isaac. Okay.
Don't forget the tongs made with tongs.
Oh, God. It seems
My
that
favorite.
Right. It seems that at the beginning of time, after 6 days of order and differentiation, this is what we started class with, God created one more thing, liminal time. And there was evening and there was morning. That's what we get in Torah. There was evening, there was morning, day one. And then there was something between evening and morning, something more murky, something more mysterious and positively miraculous. Turns out, says the tradition, Ben Hashmashot. In the midst of this gray zone, this relatively undifferentiated time period, what happens there? Whimsy, beauty, oddity, and creativity were born. Some of the most stunning and strange of the Torah's miracles emerged on the edges of order, on the edges of structured time. So we're going, wait, what? What? We thought it was all about order. We thought it was about black and white, Tameh and Tahor, Kadosh and Chol, Moed and... Wait, what are you saying here, Sefat Emet? This is a Hasidic master blowing up the priestly system, saying, no, to some extent, yes, but really, no. When does all the really groovy, yummy, cool, hallucinogenic stuff happen? It happens in between, which is also why it's dangerous. It's also why it's a little, don't go there, right? Because crazy things happen in that space. What did I find really beautiful about this? That's already like, whoa, okay. I wonder if this is the aspect of Shabbat that the Omer shares, says Rabbi Smokler. Standing between the two most epic experiences of Jewish history, the Exodus and the Revelation, perhaps we are invited to dwell, Ben Hashmashot, between those big lights for 7 weeks, to stew in an elongated period of time, unbounded by strict ritual or preset expectations. To feel into the ordinary extraordinariness that is our daily existence. Perhaps there we might find tamimut, a sense of wholeness. Perhaps there we might find miracles. Okay, right? So why did this move me so much? A, because it's completely counterintuitive, right? The Sefat Emet is arguing against the entire, in some ways, priestly system, but not really, because we don't want, but anyway, so why did this move me so? Because all we're doing right now as an institution, all I'm hearing from my colleagues, all I'm hearing from great thought leaders right now is what it means to live ben hashmashot, between pre-pandemic and post-pandemic. We are in between. We thought we weren't going to have to wear masks anymore. And what happened? Omicron. And then what happened? A more contagious subvariant of Omicron. Then what happened? A more contagious, by 25%, BA2. A more contaminating element happened and changed behavior again. But now people aren't getting as sick and they're not in the hospital and dying. So those numbers aren't going up. So LA County hasn't changed. But we know we are living bein hashmashot. We are living in this really messy in between time of trying to figure out what to do. The extraordinariness of this ordinary is so, for me, so palpable right now. People don't know what to do. It's not pandemic time. And it's not post-pandemic time. It's this weird in-betweenness as we are in the Omer. As we are in the counting of the Omer, we are in this weird, extraordinary, ordinary, trying to figure out with no guidance about on sacred time, you know what to do. Which offerings to bring. You're not supposed to work. You're da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. On regular time, you know what you're supposed to do. Your boss tells you what to do, right? Or whoever your boss is at home tells you what to do, right? And so you know what you're supposed to do, generally. I mean, we have to feel it out, but you kind of know the rhythm of your daily life. What do you do with this in-betweenness of it's not one or the other? And I think it's a really beautiful insight in general that it's the in-between where the interesting stuff lies. In general, we want to categorize everything now in our society between right, wrong, left, right, red, blue, right? Conservative, liberal. We want to make everything a binary, and that's how everyone's talking or in binaries. And what I love from this teaching is it's bein hashmashot where all the interesting stuff is. The miracles happen, but the big miracles. Okay. The liberation from slavery. Yeah, that was a big one. And the receiving of the Torah, the miracle of that. Okay, that was kind of big. In between are the little yummy miracles of a donkey that talks, of a rainbow that appears in the sky just when you think, uh-oh, here we go again. It's raining. Oh, crap, right? So for me, that is an incredibly important message for our time, that's where the miraculous lives and has its seeds of the beginning is it's in the in-between.
You've been listening to Rabbi Amy Bernstein's Friday morning Torah study from Kehillat Israel in Pacific Palisades, California. For more information, go to our website, www.ourki.org.